I never expected to be the one quietly paying for everything and still feeling invisible. Last month, I wired $200 to my parents. No fanfare, no thanks. Just another routine sacrifice swallowed in silence. My name is Riley Mitchell. I'm 30 years old and have spent 8 years as a graphic designer at a local marketing agency. To everyone else, I'm the dependable one, the daughter who keeps the family afloat without complaint. I pay the bills, fix what's broken in the old house, and cover the mortgage when times get tight. No one seems to notice, or maybe they just assume it's my duty. My mother, Audra Stone, runs the family with a velvet iron fist. She plays the perpetual victim, demanding attention that's always diverted toward my younger sister, Lisa. Lisa somehow gets all the allowances, the glory, the spotlight, while I'm left managing the chaos behind the scenes. On the surface, I try to brush it off as stress, or maybe just the way family dynamics work, but there's a dull ache that never quite fades, the sting of being unseen, unheard. Audra's attention is a currency I'll never earn, and Lisa's ease feels like a constant reminder of my own sacrifices. What no one knows is that the house we all grew up in is legally mine. I keep it a secret, unsure if I'll ever need to use it. It's my quiet power, tucked away while I hold on to the hope that someday this family will see me as more than the invisible daughter, the one who keeps it all together but never gets a place at the table. I can still see it clearly. The summer I turned 12, the first time the line between Lisa and me was drawn in stone by Mom. Lisa had just won a gymnastics trophy, and the house buzzed with balloons, laughter, and a cake shaped like a gold medal. The air was thick with celebration. I came home that day with a scraped knee from an accident on my bike, hopeful for a little comfort. Instead, I got a sideways glance and a cold, "Be more careful, Riley." That night, Audra sat me down, the words cold as ice. "Lisa is the star of this family. You need to understand your role." It was a verdict, not a conversation. From then on, I was the responsible backup, the shadow who supported without shining. I told myself it was just tough love, that maybe this was how she prepared me for the world, but the sting never dulled. When I turned 16, Lisa got a brand new car for her birthday. Me? I was told to save my money, again. Every favor, every reward, was handed to Lisa on a silver platter, while my efforts were dismissed as expected. My parents seemed blind to the weight I carried, or maybe they just refused to see it. I swallowed my hurt, convincing myself, this is just how families are. But deep inside, I knew I deserved more than just being invisible. I was more than the shadow. I longed for the moment they'd see it too. But that moment never arrived. Years have passed, and the sacrifices have piled up like invisible bricks on my shoulders. Since I was 20, I've sent almost $375 every month to cover the mortgage and utilities, a debt of over $45,000 I never asked to repay. I've canceled trips, postponed my own happiness, all to fix Mom's car or cover Dad's unexpected expenses. At 25, I turned down a promotion that would have taken me across the country because I couldn't leave my family unsupported. Daniel, my husband, has voiced his concerns gently. "They take you for granted, Riley," he said more than once. I wanted to believe otherwise. I clung to hope that my loyalty would be recognized someday, that my sacrifices mattered. Lisa lives effortlessly in Audra's favor. Her life a series of handed-down gifts and unearned privileges, oblivious to the burden I bear. Dad, Mark, stays mostly silent, caught between wanting peace and avoiding conflict. The house where I grew up, the one filled with memories of love and neglect, is legally mine. It's a secret I guard closely, a quiet shield I hesitate to raise. Family loyalty has always come first, a fragile thread holding me to a fading ideal. But beneath the surface, that ownership is my last line of defense, waiting silently for the day love and gratitude finally run dry. For now, I hold my tongue and keep the balance, hoping the family I love will someday see me as I truly am. Last summer was supposed to be joyful, a baby shower for Lisa, surrounded by family and close friends. The room was bright, filled with laughter and chatter, but then Mom's words sliced through the warmth like a knife. "Riley, darling, you're such a sweet girl, but we need your room. Lisa's nursery has to go in there now. You'll have 24 hours to move out. It's urgent." The room froze. A few guests exchanged uneasy glances. Someone stifled a laugh. My cheeks flushed hot, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Daniel squeezed my hand, grounding me, but embarrassment threatened to swallow me whole. Mom's eyes shimmered with fake tears, a perfect performance of victimhood. I forced a calm smile, voice steady despite the sting. "Of course, Mom. I understand." I left the room quietly, the offered cake untouched, retreating to the porch where the night air was cool and still. In the silence, doubt crept in like a shadow. Was I imagining things? Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe Mom was just overwhelmed. But the seed was planted, a seed that whispered I was no longer safe under their roof, that the love I'd clung to was a mirage fading fast. And as I stared into the dark, the weight of invisibility felt heavier than ever. My small act of resistance, refusing the cake, quietly excusing myself, did not go unnoticed. I hadn't shouted or caused a scene, just slipped away to the porch, needing fresh air and space to breathe. But Audra saw it as a challenge, a crack in her perfect facade she couldn't allow. Within hours, the atmosphere shifted. At family dinners, I caught the side glances and the half-finished conversations that stopped when I approached. Aunt Linda's smile was tight, and Cousin Megan barely met my eyes. Then came the whispers, sharp, low murmurs that seemed to float just beyond my hearing. "She's always so sensitive," my uncle remarked once, forcing a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Too much, really. Always taking things personally." The words stung, not because they were untrue, but because they weren't coming from me. They were echoes of Audra's carefully planted poison. My father, Mark, tried to keep the peace, but his silence when Audra spoke was louder than any defense. I found myself caught in a web of gaslighting so dense I could barely think straight. "You're imagining slights," Audra said one night, her voice sweeter than molasses but with an edge underneath. "We've done so much for you. Maybe you're the one pushing everyone away." The room felt colder each time she spoke. Even Daniel noticed the change. He watched me retreat into myself, the light in my eyes dimming. I questioned my feelings, doubting my own reality. Was I really being selfish? Unreasonable? The family I'd loved and supported for years was turning on me, wrapping themselves tightly around Audra's narrative. I was isolated, confused, drowning in the undertow of her control. The kitchen smelled faintly of burnt toast and stale coffee when Audra cornered me after a quiet Sunday brunch. "Why can't you just be grateful?" she demanded, voice low but sharp enough to cut through my defenses. "Everyone's trying here, except you." I wanted to argue, to tell her I was anything but ungrateful, but her words hit too close to the bone. Instead, I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Audra smiled then, a slow, victorious curve of her lips. It was a smile that meant she had won this round, that I was back on the sidelines where she wanted me. The family was her kingdom, and I was just a pawn she could move, or erase at will. I felt the walls closing in, the space I once held shrinking with every whispered accusation and sidelong glance. It wasn't just emotional anymore. It was a siege on my identity, my worth. The silence around me grew louder, the absence of support more deafening. I wanted to scream, to fight back harder, but fear kept my voice low. I was trapped beneath the weight of Audra's manipulation, and for the first time, I understood the depth of her power. This wasn't just control, it was a calculated dismantling of me, piece by piece. Determined to salvage what I could, I asked for a meeting with my mother and father. The tension in the air was thick when we sat down in the living room, the hum of the ceiling fan the only background noise. I tried to keep my voice calm, steady. "We need to talk," I said. "I want to be honest about how I feel." I laid out the facts carefully, my contributions to the mortgage, the sacrifices I made, how being pushed out of my own space and sidelined hurt me deeply. Audra's eyes filled with tears almost immediately, a performance I had seen too many times before. "Riley, I am your mother," she said, voice trembling as if I'd struck her with a cruel blow. "Everything I do is for this family. You're twisting things." She painted herself as the wounded party, her voice soft but laced with accusation. "You're attacking me. If you don't stop, I'll have to protect myself." I glanced at my father, hoping for support, but Mark simply nodded along silently. My words seemed to vanish into the walls, unheard and unheeded. The family mediator, Aunt Ellen, unexpectedly sided with Audra. "You're just too sensitive, Riley," Ellen said, shaking her head with a sigh that felt like final judgment. The meeting drained me. I left feeling smaller, diminished, not because I lacked strength, but because my truth had been dismissed. I hadn't come to fight or to expose anyone. I only wanted fairness, a place to be seen. Instead, I found walls closing in tighter. The fragile hope I'd clung to flickered weakly, almost snuffed out by their refusal to listen. I realized then that peace wasn't on their terms. It was a battle I might never win. The blow came unexpectedly at a local art exhibit where I was showcasing my designs. I'd been excited, hopeful this event could be a turning point, something just for me beyond family drama. Instead, Audra struck hard. Rumors had spread, slick and venomous. I was selfish, unreliable, a daughter who cared only about herself. I overheard a family member whispering to a well-known client, the words sharp enough to make my skin crawl. After the event, the client hesitated to commission me for a $5,000 branding project I'd been counting on. The sting of that doubt was nothing compared to what happened next. In front of friends and colleagues, Audra raised her voice, accusing me loudly of abandoning family responsibilities. Her words echoed around the gallery, making faces turn and conversations halt. Daniel's jaw clenched beside me, silent fury blazing in his eyes. I felt naked, exposed, humiliated more deeply than I had before. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a careless insult. It was deliberate, a weapon aimed not just at my heart, but at my livelihood. The room that should have celebrated my work became a stage for my public shaming. I realized then that Audra's cruelty was strategic, aimed at isolating me, stripping away any support I had beyond this fractured family. The raw humiliation cracked open a new fear, that I might lose everything I'd built, not just emotionally, but professionally. Despite everything, I reached out one last time, desperate for a sliver of connection. I offered to help plan Lisa's nursery, swallowing the bitterness that had grown inside me. "I just want us to be a family," I said, my voice breaking on the edges. I told Audra plainly what I needed: respect, acknowledgement, a chance to belong, to be more than the invisible daughter. I spoke from a place of vulnerability, hoping for an opening, some humanity. But she met me with cold dismissal. "You're only here because I tolerate you," she snapped, eyes hard as stone. "Don't expect more." Those words slammed down like a final verdict. No apology, no softening, just the harsh truth of her rejection. My heart ached, but beneath the pain was a fierce clarity. I had done everything I could, tried forgiveness, understanding, peace. The relationship wasn't just broken, it was toxic beyond repair. I could feel the weight of that truth settle in my bones. Now, the path ahead wasn't about pleasing her or bending to her will. It was about protecting myself. For the first time, I understood that survival meant setting boundaries, even if it meant walking away from the family I'd loved so fiercely for so long. The door she shut was brutal, but in that cold rejection, I found a spark of something new, my own strength. The days after the nursery incident felt like I was sinking deeper into quicksand. Audra's venomous accusations had spread like wildfire. At family gatherings, I was increasingly a ghost. People's eyes flickered away before I could meet them. Conversations hushed when I approached. Even the relatives who once nodded politely now gave me thinly veiled looks of doubt. I overheard whispers that twisted my words, painted me as unstable and ungrateful. Friends I'd known for years started asking me, cautiously, if I was okay, or if I was overreacting. The sting in their tone cut deeper than any outright insult. Daniel was my anchor. His hand on my shoulder was steady, but I could see the helplessness in his eyes. How could he fight this when I was barely holding myself together? The house, my home, the place I'd invested in with sweat and money, felt like it was slipping through my fingers. I walked through the rooms we'd shared, running my hands over the walls, the counters, each corner a memory, yet the warmth was gone. It was as though the very air was thick with betrayal, suffocating in its silence. I'd been paying the mortgage for a decade, sacrificing so much, and still I was treated like a stranger in my own life. The financial burden was heavy, but the emotional weight was unbearable. I questioned myself relentlessly. Was I too sensitive? Was I imagining the cruelty? Did I push people away without realizing it? My reflection in the mirror looked back tired and hollow, and I wondered if I was the problem after all. The exhaustion seeped into my bones, leaving me raw and fragile, isolated in a crowd that once felt like family. Late at night, I sat on the porch, the cool breeze doing little to calm the storm inside me. My chest ached with loneliness, the silence deafening. I wanted to scream, to demand justice, but my voice faltered beneath layers of doubt and shame. The small ember of hope I'd clung to flickered weakly, overwhelmed by the shadows that had consumed my world. Still, despite the crushing weight, a faint spark remained. Deep beneath the pain, beneath the self-doubt, something waited, quiet and persistent. I wasn't done. Not yet. The fight inside me was far from over, even if I couldn't see the path ahead clearly. The darkness was thick, but I could still feel the faint pulse of that ember, promising a flame if only I dared to breathe life into it. I looked at Daniel and saw the unwavering support in his eyes. He never judged or pressured me. He simply held space for my pain. "You're not alone," he whispered one night, his voice soft but sure. I clung to those words like a lifeline, even when the world seemed set against me. The house might feel like a prison now, but I remembered why I'd fought so hard to keep it, because it was the last piece of myself they couldn't take without a fight. Maybe I was broken, but I wasn't defeated. The ember beneath the ash was growing, waiting for the moment it could ignite. The day of my 29th birthday should have been a quiet celebration, a small reprieve from the chaos. Instead, it became the moment everything I believed in shattered. Audra's eyes held that same cold, calculating smile as she handed me the stack of legal papers. "Happy birthday, Riley," she said, voice dripping with false sweetness. My hands trembled as I unfolded the documents, the legal jargon burning into my skin. The house was being transferred, completely and irrevocably, to Lisa's name. I sat frozen, the room closing in as the weight of the betrayal crashed down. 10 years of mortgage payments, sacrifices, memories, all erased with a signature. I tried to speak, to protest, but the words caught in my throat. The witnesses, my father, my sister, even Daniel, watched silently, their faces unreadable. Dad's eyes avoided mine. Lisa's smirk was smug, and Daniel's jaw tightened with restrained anger. Audra's voice rang out sharp and final. "This is for Lisa's future. Your time here is over." The declaration sliced through me like a blade. In that moment, everything shifted. The hope I'd clung to, the illusions I'd held about family and fairness, crumbled to dust. Instead of despair, a cold clarity washed over me, icy and unforgiving. I wasn't the hopeful daughter anymore. I was a woman cornered, betrayed in the most intimate way possible. And from that fracture, a steely resolve began to form. The line had been crossed, and I knew there could be no going back. Sitting there, the paper trembling in my hands, the room felt like a courtroom, where I was the defendant, jury, and victim all at once. Audra's triumph was palpable, but beneath her victorious gaze, I saw the truth I'd been blind to. This family wasn't going to recognize my worth, nor honor my sacrifices. The house, my sanctuary, was being stripped away. But inside me, something else was awakening. Not brokenness, but defiance. The cold clarity didn't numb me. It sharpened me. I felt the last threads of hope unravel and the raw necessity of survival take hold. If they wanted war, I was ready to fight. This wasn't about a house anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my power, my life. The hurt was real, but the fire was fiercer. Later that night, alone in my room, the silence echoed with years of pain. I replayed every moment, every sacrifice, every dismissive word, every manipulated smile, The grief was heavy, but beneath it all, anger began to simmer, not the wild, uncontrolled kind, but a cold, calculated fury that settled deep in my bones. I realized how much I'd ignored, the countless ways Audra had twisted reality, the favoritism that cast me as the villain, the family's silent complicity that left me isolated. This wasn't just neglect or misunderstanding. It was a deliberate, crushing manipulation designed to break me, and for too long, I'd let it happen. But now, that anger was a shield. I wasn't a helpless victim anymore. I was a woman who had been pushed to the edge and found strength there. The power I'd kept hidden, the mortgage payments, the legal ownership of the house, were no longer just numbers on a ledger. They were my weapons. I promised myself then, never again would I let guilt or misplaced love blind me. I would protect myself, fiercely and without apology. The family affection I'd mourned was a luxury I could no longer afford. The cold clarity had crystallized into a promise of action, of boundaries, and of reclaiming control. I was done being invisible. That night, I sat beside Daniel, the weight of the day heavy between us. His quiet presence was steady, a reminder I wasn't alone. I took a deep breath and said, "I'm done hoping for their approval. It's time to take control." My voice was firm, the exhaustion replaced by a newfound determination. I own the house. I've paid the mortgage. I'm going to use every legal tool to protect what's mine and make them understand. Daniel's gaze was steady, unwavering. "I'm with you, Riley, but be careful. This is going to get messy." I nodded, feeling the gravity of his words, but also the necessity of the path ahead. We began to talk strategy, the fog of confusion clearing as we laid out the steps. First, gather every piece of documentation, bank statements, mortgage records, any proof of my financial contributions. Next, consult a lawyer who specialized in family estate law, someone who could cut through the smokescreens and lies. The target was clear: Audra, whose manipulation had nearly destroyed everything I held dear. I felt a shift inside me, a strategic mindset taking root where despair had once lived. This was no longer about pleading or hoping. It was about asserting my rights, dismantling the control she held over my life. For the first time in years, I felt the beginnings of a plan, a way forward that was mine alone. The ember had caught flame, and I was ready to fight. I spent hours hunched over old bank statements, mortgage receipts, and emails, tracing every cent I'd poured into the house and household expenses. The weight of it all hit me hard. The undeniable truth that they'd been living off my sacrifices for years. Utility bills, property taxes, home repairs, everything I'd arranged quietly without fanfare or thanks. Flicking through dusty folders, I mapped out the financial veins that connected me to the family's fragile foundation. The realization settled in like a cold wave. They depended on me far more than I ever admitted. It wasn't just money, it was control disguised as oblivion. The next day, I sat down with Emily Harris, our family lawyer, whose calm professionalism was a balm to my frayed nerves. "Riley," she said, tapping the thick file in front of her, "the property deed is rock solid. You own this house. It's not ambiguous or up for debate." I nodded, swallowing a surge of bitter relief. Emily's eyes flickered briefly as she explained Audra's precarious financial situation. Debts piling up, shaky credit, forged signatures on certain documents. My mother's desperation was no secret to me now. It was etched in cold legal terms. "What about the family's emotional leverage?" I asked, my voice low. Emily smiled faintly. "Emotional pressure isn't law, but it's a factor, especially when you have documented proof of coercion or forgery. That's where your leverage grows." I made notes carefully, documenting every instance where Audra had manipulated, threatened, or silenced family members. The picture was clearer than ever. The narrative had been hers to control, but the foundation was cracking. The truth was a weapon, and I was finally holding it. Sitting in that sterile office, I felt the first flicker of power in months, the weight of dependence, the silence forced on me, the invisible labor. It all gave me leverage. They needed me more than I needed them. But this wasn't a rush to judgment. It was a careful game. Patience was my weapon now, precision my shield. I was planning a legal checkmate, not a reckless attack. The path ahead was narrow and treacherous, but for the first time in years, I was the one holding the map. Over the following weeks, my daily routine transformed into quiet, meticulous preparation. I changed passwords on shared accounts, secured documents in encrypted drives, and authorized Emily to draft the legal notices that would soon find their way to Audra. Each small action was a brick laid in the foundation of my plan. To those around me, I appeared unchanged, calm, helpful, even warm. I chipped in with minor household chores, smiled in family gatherings, and exchanged polite pleasantries. But beneath the surface, I was a volcano simmering, counting the days until the eruption. Audra remained blissfully unaware, consumed with planning Lisa's nursery, color schemes, furniture choices, baby names, while I quietly reinforced my defenses. Daniel watched me with a mix of admiration and concern. One evening, after I tightened another security measure on our shared accounts, he caught my eye and murmured, "You're different, Riley. Stronger, but distant." I nodded, barely able to form words. The storm was coming, and I was the calm before it. Every password changed. Every document locked away was a move in a silent war. The tension coiled tightly inside me, invisible to everyone else. I was like a time bomb, ticking down to the moment when patience would yield to action. Then, the call came, unexpected and shattering. Aunt Ellen's voice trembled through the phone, hesitant but burdened. "Riley, I can't keep this secret any longer." My breath caught. She sent me a folder filled with dusty, forgotten family financial records and emails. As I sifted through the papers, my hands trembling, I uncovered the brutal truth. Audra had siphoned $50,000 from our grandfather's estate, money that legally belonged to me, and funneled it into Lisa's trust fund without my knowledge. The betrayal was staggering, but worse was Aunt Ellen's confession. For years, Audra had pressured her to stay silent, threatening family fractures if she spoke out. My heart pounded as the weight of this new evidence settled over me like a thunderclap. The web of lies was deeper and more calculated than I'd ever imagined. I wasn't just fighting for fairness anymore. This was a battle for justice, and the stakes were higher than I'd dared hope. Aunt Ellen's courage in reaching out shattered the isolation I'd felt for so long. I was no longer alone. The legal ground beneath Audra's feet was crumbling, and the urgency to act surged through me like wildfire. The veil lifted completely, and the cold clarity of truth burned away the last remnants of doubt. With Emily's steady hand guiding me, I sent formal notices to Audra and Lisa, demanding immediate transparency on all property finances. I froze any further transfers related to the house and trust funds, a legal iron curtain drawn around my interests. The silence that followed was deafening. I stopped all personal financial support, the utility payments, maintenance, everything. My decision was deliberate, forcing Audra to face the crushing reality of consequences for once. Around the family, whispers bubbled as cracks appeared in the facade I'd once called home. Audra's frantic calls came in waves, each more desperate than the last, but I held firm. I refused to engage emotionally, my voice cold and steady. Daniel stood unwavering at my side, witnessing the transformation, the quiet, methodical woman I was becoming. The first tangible blow came when Audra's credit card was declined, bills left unpaid because I'd stopped footing the bill. The house felt less like a battleground and more like a chessboard now. Every move was calculated, every piece poised for the next strike. Family members exchanged uneasy glances, sensing a shift they couldn't yet grasp. The power dynamic was tilting, and I remained silent, letting the legal machinery gather unstoppable momentum. The storm had begun, and though the sky hadn't yet darkened fully, the air was thick with the promise of reckoning. I steeled myself, knowing the path ahead would test every ounce of strength I had left. But for the first time, I wasn't retreating into shadows. I was stepping into the light, ready to claim what was mine. The day of the family meeting, I walked in with Emily and Daniel by my side, my hands clutching the folder that held the truth. Audra had called this gathering under the guise of reconciliation, but I could feel the weight of anticipation settling like a storm cloud over the room. The air was thick with forced smiles and tense silences. Lisa smirked from her seat, confident and untouchable. My father's gaze was downcast, like he was already defeated. I took a deep breath and began. "I want to lay everything out here," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "Mortgage payments, bank statements, inheritance documents. This is the reality you've tried to erase." Eyes shifted uncomfortably as I unfolded the evidence. Handwritten ledgers, signed contracts, and bank transfers tracing every cent I'd contributed. There was no room for denial. Audra's face drained of color, her usual mask cracking. "You can't do this," she hissed, voice trembling with suppressed rage. But I held the room with my gaze, calm and unyielding. "I've done everything for this family, without thanks, without acknowledgement, but I won't be erased anymore. The house is mine, the money is mine, and I'm protecting my rights." My words hung heavy in the silence that followed. I saw relatives exchange glances, some shocked, others uncomfortable. Lisa refused to meet my eyes, her smirk fading. Dad looked away, his silence louder than any defense. The power had shifted. I was no longer the invisible daughter. I was the woman who had reclaimed her place. The quiet satisfaction warmed me from within, a fire burning through years of neglect and betrayal. In the aftermath of my revelation, Audra's world began to unravel at an alarming pace. The financial lifeline I'd quietly maintained was severed, and the consequences hit hard and fast. Bills went unpaid, utilities flickered with threat of disconnection, and contractors halted repairs on the house that had become a battlefield. Audra's desperation was palpable. Her frantic phone calls came in waves, each more pleading than the last. "Riley, please, we can fix this. You don't have to do this," she begged, voice cracking with false remorse. I stayed resolute, my responses cold and measured. "No more enabling, Audra. The boundaries are clear." My phone buzzed constantly. Threats, sob stories, frantic apologies from Audra, and even messages from relatives caught between loyalty and truth. Aunt Ellen's quiet support was a small but steady light, while Lisa's allegiance wavered, her cool detachment faltering. The family dynamic shifted visibly. Whispers replaced cheerful chatter, and the once unshakable control Audra wielded began to crumble. I felt no joy in her downfall, only the grim satisfaction of justice unfolding. The financial strain and social embarrassment were real, but I held firm, focused not on cruelty, but on what was right. The scales had tipped irrevocably. Audra's tactics became more desperate and venomous as she tried to claw back control. She resorted to emotional blackmail, threatening to make public accusations, to drag the family's dirty laundry before everyone. She rallied a handful of relatives who still backed her, urging them to pressure me into forgiving and saving the family. Texts arrived in waves, accusations of greed, vicious social media posts painting me as the villain. A cease and desist letter landed on my desk, demanding I drop all claims or face legal retaliation. But I was no longer the frightened girl who cowered under her mother's wrath. Emily handled the legal front with quiet precision, while Daniel grounded me with his steady presence. Some relatives, witnessing Audra's unraveling, reached out with genuine apologies. I accepted them cautiously, drawing my boundaries clearly. Audra's isolation grew deeper with every failed manipulation. Once dominant and commanding, she was now consumed by defeat. Her attempts to break me failed because I no longer offered guilt or fear, only firm boundaries and unshakable resolve. Now the house stands secure in my name, a symbol of the peace I fought so hard to win. The mortgage is paid, the utilities running smoothly, and the walls no longer echo with tension, but with the quiet strength of ownership. Daniel and I have built a life together based on trust and mutual respect, far from the toxic dynamics that once defined me. Contact with family is minimal now, limited to polite exchanges with those who respect the boundaries I've set. Audra faces the consequences of her actions: financial strain, fractured relationships, and a diminished influence she can no longer reclaim. I don't miss the invisible role I once played, the burden of silent sacrifice. Instead, I have peace, born not from forgetting the pain, but from standing up, setting limits, and reclaiming my voice. The journey was painful and exhausting, but necessary. I learned that respect is earned through accountability, not given freely. The past decade taught me to value myself enough to say no, to fight for what is rightfully mine. And now, the future is mine to define, by strength, autonomy, and a quiet dignity that no one can take away.